The screaming wouldn't stop. Roxanne Carter was pinned to the concrete floor, her orange jumpsuit soaked in blood, not her own. A dozen inmates circled her like sharks, the clang of alarms echoing off steel walls. The red emergency lights flashed, painting everything in sharp, pulsing color. A prison officer shouted for backup, but no one dared step in yet. "Get off her," someone yelled, but Roxanne's hands were already around another woman's throat, Casey Monroe, the toughest inmate in the block. Casey's eyes bulged, her fingers clawing at Roxanne's wrists as the guards finally burst in with batons and pepper spray. Then came the sound, the sharp crack of a baton, the choking hiss of pepper gas, and a voice that shook the whole block. "Everybody down. Now!" And just like that, silence fell. Smoke hung in the air. Casey wasn't moving. Roxanne knelt there, shaking, as handcuffs clicked tight around her wrists. From somewhere above, the voice of Warden Graves boomed over the intercom. "Cell Block D is on full lockdown. I repeat, lockdown. No one leaves until we know what happened." The guards dragged Roxanne to her feet, her eyes red and wild. The whole room stared. No one said a word. She knew, in that instant, that something had just changed forever. But the truth was, what led to this moment had started long before. Long before Roxanne ever wore orange, long before she even knew what survival really meant. And that's where her story begins. 6 months earlier, the sun had barely risen over the quiet town of Lafayette, Louisiana. The air smelled like rain and oil, and somewhere, a car engine refused to start. Roxanne Carter sat behind the wheel of a rusty blue sedan, smacking the steering wheel in frustration. "Come on, baby," she whispered, turning the key again. The car coughed, then finally roared to life. She smiled faintly, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her face. Today wasn't supposed to go wrong. Not today. She was on her way to work, or at least that's what she told herself. But deep down, Roxanne knew that her life had already spun out of control. The bills were piling up, her kid sister was sick, and the only thing keeping food on the table was the wrong kind of company. That's when Casey Monroe came into her life. Casey wasn't the kind of woman you met by accident. She was fast-talking, sharp, and dangerous in the way that made you curious. She drove a black Dodge Charger that looked stolen, because it was, and when she smiled, it never reached her eyes. "Rox," Casey said that night at the diner, sipping her coffee like she owned the place. "You still working those late shifts at the warehouse?" "Trying to," Roxanne said. "They're cutting hours again. I need something steady." Casey leaned in, lowering her voice. "What if I told you I got something better? Real money. No clocking in, no boss breathing down your neck. Just one drive." Roxanne frowned. "A drive?" Casey grinned. "Yeah, just a delivery. Nothing crazy. In and out." That night, Roxanne said no. But 2 weeks later, when the eviction notice landed on her front door, she called Casey back. The job was supposed to be simple. Drive a car from Lafayette to Baton Rouge. Don't open the trunk. Don't stop for gas anywhere but the station Casey marked on the map. And most importantly, don't ask questions. Roxanne wasn't stupid. She knew it wasn't legal. But she told herself it was just a one-time thing, just enough to cover her sister's hospital bill. The night of the job, the rain came down hard. Casey handed her the keys to a red Mustang and a cheap burner phone. "Follow my lead," Casey said. "And whatever happens, don't stop for the cops." That line sent a chill through Roxanne's stomach. Wait, why would? But before she could finish, Casey had already jumped into the passenger seat and slammed the door. The Mustang roared to life, tires screeching against wet asphalt. The two women tore down the dark Louisiana highway, headlights slicing through sheets of rain. It was supposed to be just a drive. But as they hit the state border, blue lights flared in the rearview mirror. "Cops," Roxanne whispered. Casey smirked. "I told you not to stop." Roxanne's hands shook on the steering wheel. "Casey, what's in the trunk?" No answer. The police sirens grew louder, flashing lights bouncing off the road. Roxanne's heart pounded. The rain made it impossible to see, and the Mustang fishtailed dangerously. "Casey, tell me what's back there," she screamed. That's when a loud thump came from the trunk. Something, or someone, was moving inside. "Drive," Casey shouted. But Roxanne's mind froze. She slammed the brakes, skidding sideways across the soaked road. The Mustang spun, crashing into a guardrail. Airbags exploded. The world went white. When Roxanne opened her eyes, everything was silent, except for the distant wail of sirens. Casey was gone. The passenger door hung open, and in the back of the car, the trunk had popped open. Roxanne turned, trembling, as her eyes met the impossible. Inside the trunk was a man's body, lifeless, pale, and bound at the wrists. Her breath caught in her throat. "Oh, God." She stumbled backward out of the car, slipping in the rain. The sirens grew closer. Blue lights reflected in puddles all around her. There was no time to think. Casey's voice echoed faintly in the distance. She was running into the woods. Roxanne tried to follow, but the police were already there. "Freeze," a voice shouted. "Hands where we can see them." She turned, hands shaking, eyes wide. It's not what it looks like. But it didn't matter. The next thing she knew, she was face down on the cold pavement, her wrists pulled behind her back. And that's how Roxanne Carter's story began. Not as a killer, not as a criminal mastermind, but as a desperate woman who made one terrible choice. For months later, she stood behind bars for the first time. Iron Valley Correctional Facility wasn't just any women's prison. It was the kind of place where even the guards looked scared. The walls were gray, cold, and always wet. The air smelled like bleach and fear. The first day, a guard handed her a folded orange jumpsuit and said, "Welcome to Iron Valley. Keep your head down, and maybe you'll make it out." Inside, the other inmates sized her up like wolves circling new prey. Some looked away. Others smiled in ways that weren't friendly. That's when she saw Casey again. Her old partner was standing by the cell block stairs, her smirk unchanged. "Miss me?" she said softly. Roxanne froze. You're here? Didn't think I'd let you take the fall alone, did you?" Casey said, stepping closer. "This place? It's all about survival. And trust me, Rox, you're gonna need me." Roxanne didn't answer. She just nodded, feeling the cold metal door slam shut behind her. She didn't know it yet, but Iron Valley was about to test her in ways she could never imagine. Here, women either learned how to thrive, or they broke. And as the night lights flickered across the block, Roxanne lay awake on her bunk, the sound of distant screams echoing through the halls. Somewhere deep inside, she whispered to herself, "I'm not breaking." But the truth was, the breaking had already begun. That was the night before the fight. The same fight that would leave one woman dead, one in handcuffs, and the whole prison on lockdown. And in the darkness, as footsteps approached her cell, Roxanne didn't yet know, this was only the beginning. The sound of boots echoed down the hallway. Roxanne sat on the cold floor of solitary confinement, her hands trembling in her lap. The small, square cell was painted white, but years of grime had turned it gray. A single light flickered above her, buzzing like an angry bee. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Casey's face, those wide eyes staring up at her. The fight replaying again and again. The screams. The sirens. The way the guards had dragged her off, as if she were some kind of monster. "Casey's dead," one of the guards had said earlier. "You better hope the warden believes your story." Dead. The word didn't even sound real. Roxanne pressed her palms to her temples. "I didn't mean to. I didn't." Her voice broke in the empty cell. The truth was, she hadn't wanted the fight. Casey had come at her first, whispering threats in the yard days before. Something about loyalty. Something about secrets. "You think you can survive here without me?" Casey had said, her smile sharp as glass. "You're nothing without protection. And if I go down, you go down with me." That's when Roxanne knew, the trunk, the man, the whole setup, it was never over. Even inside prison, Casey still had power. She had friends, favors, control. And now Casey was gone. Or was she? The cell door opened with a metallic groan. 2 guards stepped in, their faces hidden behind clear riot shields. Behind them came a woman in a navy blue suit, Warden Graves herself. "Carter," the warden said, her voice calm but sharp. "You and I need to talk." Roxanne looked up, her throat dry. Is she dead?" Graves didn't answer. Instead, she motioned to the guards. "Bring her." They cuffed Roxanne's wrists and led her down the narrow hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of bleach filled the air. Every door they passed had someone watching, inmates whispering behind small rectangular windows. The walk to the interrogation room felt endless. When they finally arrived, Graves sat across from her at a metal table. A tape recorder blinked red between them. "Roxanne Carter," the warden began, "you were involved in a violent altercation in cell block D. One inmate, Casey Monroe, is in critical condition. She may not make it through the night." Roxanne swallowed hard. "She attacked me first. I tried to stop her." Graves studied her for a long moment. "You've been here 4 months. No priors inside. No write-ups. And yet somehow, you ended up nearly killing one of the most feared inmates in Iron Valley. That's interesting." Roxanne looked down. "I didn't want any of this." The warden leaned forward. "You better start wanting something, Carter. Because once that woman dies, this entire place will turn against you. Casey had friends, powerful ones. You'll need to learn how to survive fast, or you'll be next." Roxanne's stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Graves said, "that Iron Valley eats people like you alive." The warden stood and nodded to the guards. "Take her back to Gen Pop. Let's see how long she lasts." The main block was quieter than usual when Roxanne returned. Word had already spread. In prison, news traveled faster than light. Women leaned against their cell doors, whispering. A few glared as she walked past. One woman, tall and tattooed, muttered, "That's her. The one who took down Monroe." Roxanne tried not to make eye contact. Every step she took felt heavier. When she reached her bunk, her cellmate, Tina Alvarez, a small, nervous woman with dark curls, sat on the bed, eyes wide. "You okay?" Tina whispered. Roxanne didn't answer. She just sat down, staring at the floor. Tina leaned closer. "You know what they're saying? That Casey's crew's coming for you. That they're gonna—" "Stop," Roxanne said sharply. "I don't want to hear it." Tina went quiet. The air between them felt tight. Later that night, the cell block lights dimmed. Somewhere down the hall, a woman laughed, a strange, cold laugh that made Roxanne's skin crawl. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Every sound made her flinch, the clang of metal doors, the shuffle of feet, the distant drip of a leaking pipe. She thought about her sister back home. The last time she'd seen her was in the courtroom, her face red from crying. Roxanne had promised she'd come back someday. But how could she keep that promise now? Her mind wandered to Casey. What if she survived? What if she woke up and told the warden everything? The car, the trunk, the man? Roxanne's stomach knotted. If Casey talked, Roxanne would never see the outside again. And if Casey died, the women loyal to her might make sure Roxanne didn't live long either. The next morning, breakfast was tense. The cafeteria buzzed with quiet conversations and sideways glances. Guards stood at every exit, more alert than usual. Roxanne grabbed her tray, gray scrambled eggs, soggy toast, and tried to sit at an empty table. But before she could, 3 women blocked her path. At the front was Marlene Big Red Turner, a broad-shouldered inmate with a scar across her cheek. She had been Casey's closest ally. Well, Red said, smiling without humor. "If it isn't the little killer herself." Roxanne froze. "I didn't kill anyone." Red leaned closer, her breath hot. "We'll see about that." One of the other women snatched Roxanne's tray and dumped it on the floor. Laughter rippled across the room. A guard yelled, "Hey, break it up." But no one moved. Roxanne looked at the food on the floor, then back at Red. Every instinct told her to fight back. But another part, the smarter part, said to stay calm. She straightened up slowly. "You want to believe I did it? Fine. But I didn't start this. Red's smile faded. She stepped back, studying Roxanne's face. You've got guts. Let's see if you can keep them. The guard stepped in then, breaking the standoff. But everyone in the cafeteria had seen. From that moment, Roxanne wasn't just another inmate. She was marked. By evening, her nerves were stretched thin. She sat alone in the rec yard, watching the sky turn purple behind the razor wire. The air smelled like rust and wet concrete. Across the yard, two guards were talking quietly, glancing at her every few seconds. She couldn't tell if they were suspicious or scared. Tina joined her, clutching her sweater. You shouldn't be out here. Why not? Roxanne said. Because Red's people are planning something. Roxanne looked at her sharply. What do you mean? I heard them in the showers. They said tonight, when the lights go out. Roxanne's heart began to race. You sure? Tina nodded. You need to tell the guards. Roxanne shook her head. No. That'll only make it worse. She stood up, staring through the fence at the distant watchtower. I'll handle it. Tina grabbed her arm. How? You can't fight them all. Roxanne turned, her eyes cold now. I survived the outside. I can survive this. That night, the lights went out earlier than usual. The prison fell silent except for the hum of the vents and the faint sound of metal doors locking into place. Roxanne lay in her bunk, pretending to sleep. But every sense in her body was on alert. Then she heard it, the soft squeak of her cell door sliding open. Her eyes snapped open. 3 shadows slipped inside, moving quickly and quietly. One of them whispered, "End of the line, Carter." Roxanne's pulse exploded in her chest. She rolled off the bunk just as a sharpened toothbrush stabbed into the mattress where her head had been.